Now with a 100% larger range of flat caps on air, welcome to episode 3 of Dre TV. Cue fancy new intro sequence.
Welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make you feel
Hey guys, Hassan1 back at it once again, and welcome to episode 3 of Dre TV, your weekly look at all things Formula 1 and MotoGP related, here on the Harrison 101 channel. Bit of a MotoGP flavour to this week's episode. We've got a full triple race review of all 3 MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3 races from the season opener in Qatar this past weekend, as well as a new segment to the show called Ask Dre. Really looking forward to debuting that one and getting your questions on the show, and a chance for more of you guys to get involved. And I'll also be talking about the recent coverage of MotoGP taken over by BT Sport this past weekend. A lot of varying opinions about that, and I want to kind of throw my 2 cents into that ring as well. So in the meantime, I hope you guys sit back and enjoy the triple review of Qatar in the MotoGP this weekend. The hype was most definitely real. There was a real buzz surrounding this race, unlike anything I've seen for the sport in recent years, after the most competitive qualifying sessions the sport has seen in a long time, with Marc Marquez's 10th pole position in just 19 career starts, from just half a tenth from Aarava Bautista, and a shocking third from Bradley Smith of Tech 3, with all 12 runners in Q2 separated by just 0.6 of a second. Off the line, it was a very surprising hole shot from Jorge Lorenzo, of all people. Amazingly, the double world champion had been very quiet all weekend, but shot through from 5th place to lead through turn 1, and so it all went pear-shaped. Crashed out on turn 6. Remember this, it becomes important later. I suspect this was the standard Lorenzo attempt of pushing like hell to start with, and generate such a lead that the tyre wear at the end is manageable. Whoops. So as a result, Stefan Bradl out of nowhere had taken the lead with Andrea Iannone, an incredible 4th on the Pramac Ducati, until he too binned it in the final sector a couple of laps later. Luckily enough, he was able to keep going and actually managed to finish a pretty respectable 10th. Meanwhile, up the front, Bradl was still in control with Marquez, Rossi, Bautista, Pedrosa and Smith close behind, until Bradl was too caught out by the infamous turn 6, and down he went in what was almost a carbon copy of Lorenzo's first lap case of the dropsies, only on lap 8 rather than lap 1. The front pack was starting to split, with Marquez and Rossi breaking off slightly at the front, with Bradley Smith falling back slightly into the clutches of Bautista and Pedrosa, until right at the end where Smith fell with just a handful of laps left, just ahead of his teammate Pol Espargaro, who had to retire due to a suspected brake failure. Bautista and Pedrosa were going back and forth for the final podium position until Bautista came into turn 3 just a little too hot, and down he went too. A shame considering he was well on track to his first podium in the top class since Motegi 2012. But at the front, it was Rossi and Marquez who went to war once again, showing shades of their desert scrap from last year, and the back and forth was immense, Rossi channeling some of the form that has captivated the world on several occasions in the past. But this time, it was Marc Marquez who won through, with a race-winning pass on the penultimate lap, en route to a clutch final lap. Somehow, his personal best of the Grand Prix, and victory by just a quarter of a second. Pedrosa 3 seconds back to round off the podium. As a result of the multiple dropouts, it got Alex Espargaro a career-high 4th place finish, as well as the honour of top open class runner. Further down the order, Cal Crutchlow had a faulty ECU which had him bunny-hopping his Ducati to 6th place behind his teammate Andrea Dovizioso, and a superb debut for Scott Redding in 7th place, given how slow his customer Honda was in a straight line. According to BT Sport's James Tosland, poor Scotty was losing 15 miles an hour down the home straight, the equivalent of about 0.6 of a second a lap. Overall, this was a brilliant race that had everything. Drama, quality riding, some shocking crashes, and that initial excitement that the Formula 1 race in Melbourne had too, carried over and made it much more enjoyable. The Marquez-Rossi battle up the front was almost like a Hollywood movie. Rossi refusing to give in as the last member of the old guard of the early 2000s against the new school in Marc Marquez, the most naturally gifted rider of the modern era, and it was wonderful to watch. This was as much of a passing the torch moment as we've seen in MotoGP to date. And the scary part is, this was a Marquez at about 50%, coming off the broken leg and the overall lack of conditioning. Let that sink in for a minute. This is a 9 out of 10 race for me. For me, a 9 is a race that could and should entertain a fan of any sport, regardless of whether you're a MotoGP fan or not. If you can find the race on the internet, watch it, pass it around and enjoy. It really is a modern classic. To Moto 2, and it was a pretty unsurprising affair all in. At the front, you could have easily confused it with Indianapolis from last year. Taka Nakagami had the whole shot and was in control of the race for the first half or so, until title favourite Tito Rabat for the Mark VDS team overtook him, where he managed to stay. In all fairness, Taka had learned his lesson from last year in pacing himself and leaving his tyres in a better condition, but just didn't quite have enough to get the win in the end. However, it all meant nothing anyway, as he was later disqualified for the Yodometsu team running an illegal air filter. Wow, a team mess up. Sound familiar? Slightly further down, an incredible job from Mika Kallio coming off his monster crash the day before to finish in second, his 50th GP podium, as well as Maverick Vinales, the Moto3 World Champion of 2013, finishing a sensational 4th on his Moto2 debut. Solid rides from the other promoted riders too, with Jonas Volger in 11th and Luis Salom in 14th. Also, shout out to Sam Lowes for a very impressive 6th place on the speed-up bike on his Moto2 debut representing Great Britain. Moto3 was an interesting one. Title favourite Alex Rins had an awful start and fell to 12th off the opening lap, but fought his way back to lead the chasing front two, consisting of his teammate Alex Marquez and the new Red Bull KTM recruit Jack Miller. As the final lap rolled around, there was a pack of 5 at the front with Marquez, Miller, Rins, Oliveira and Vasquez, who seemed to have fitted nitrous oxide to his Honda engine, flying past riders down Qatar's massive front straight. Seriously, it was like watching the second coming of Casey Stoner's Ducati from yesteryear. But with Marquez going wide after missing a gear on the final lap, it was Jack Miller to take his first Grand Prix win. Who needs Luis Salom? Alex Marquez recovered from the carnage to finish in second, with Efren Vasquez beating out Miguel Oliveira for the final podium spot by 15 thousandths of a second. Alex Rins losing out by finishing in 5th. Oh, and I've been told by my adorable favourite MotoGP fan Ellie, you know who you are, to look out for Karel Haneke, who finished in 14th, the dominant Red Bull rookie from 2013. So on the whole, an incredible night of racing. Go find the replays if you can. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that MotoGP race review there, a little triple set. Like I said, great weekend of races across the board. If you haven't checked out any of them, or if you're a new fan, absolutely check all 3 of them out. They were great races, and I hope you really enjoyed them as much as I did. And I did reviewing that, because trust me, I had to watch the race 3 times to get all of those details in that race review. It was a nightmare. So I hope you guys appreciated and enjoyed that a little bit. Now, time for a new segment called Ask Dre. Okay guys, welcome to Ask Dre, and on an Ask Dre is where you guys send in your questions towards me to answer live on the air. It could be anything to do with Formula 1 or MotoGP, and I hope you guys appreciate and enjoy it. Okay, first question is from a fan of the show, Elusive Kev, a long-time fan of the show. Hello Kev, good to see you. Keep up the power oversteers, my man. He asks, do you see Ducati winning in MotoGP this season? Interesting one. This is to do with the new open class rules, where basically Ducati get more fuel in their tanks, they get softer tyres to play with, and they are actually allowed to develop their ECUs and their engines over the course of the season. It's an attempt by Dorna to make MotoGP a little bit more competitive. Compared to the previous years where it's just been dominated by factories. And I must admit, the qualifying made me very excited, because the qualifying seemed to show that the field was much closer together around one lap of a track. It definitely seems as if the open class rules have definitely made the open class bikes faster around one lap, for sure. When it comes to race pace, I still think they're lacking a little bit. Ducati were not really in the opening pack in terms of pace over the course of the 22 laps of Qatar. They were close, but they were closer than where they've been in the past, but they still weren't quite there yet. So I think it's definitely reduced the margin a little bit, and I would love to have seen where Andrea Iannone would have ended up if he'd stayed on his bike more than a lap. But overall, I thought it has definitely helped. Do I see them winning? Probably not. I think it'll probably have to take something like a rain-affected race, which can just generally wreaks havoc on the entire field for something like that to happen. I think what happened in Qatar in the end was that the usual eggs and the chickens fell into place where the factory guys were still at the front anyway. Repsol Honda in the lead, Fiat Yamaha, the movie star Yamaha just about in second, and the second Honda in third. And until the drops, Bautista and Bradl and Bradley Smith were all up there as well near the top. So the factory runners still seem to have the advantage over an entire race. For now, at least. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't see Ducati winning anytime soon with those new bikes. Anywho, next up we have another around the corner man himself. We have Mr. Tiamat Marduk sending a question. He's a big Alonso fan, so he sent this Alonso-related question to me. He said, do you think Alonso will call it quits with Ferrari this year if it's another average year? Possibly 2 new drivers in 2015. I can definitely see that happening. This is Alonso's, I think, 5th season with Ferrari now since 2010, and he's come close a couple of times. He's been blown out a couple of times as well. Alonso's clearly the second best driver in Formula 1 at worst. At worst. I know a lot of people have him at number 1, and there's a legitimate argument to that, for sure. Alonso's a top 2 driver in Formula 1, and he likes to go around. He's not been a very loyal driver over the years. He likes to chop and change, and he likes to align himself up with maybe not the best team, but the second or third best team, and turn them into winners, because he's already achieved 2 world titles. And I think in his eyes, if he wins the title in an inferior car, it will cement his legacy as the one of the greatest drivers of all time. Ferrari's been disappointing for him. It's just not quite worked out, and I think he's been very unlucky where that's concerned. I can definitely see him going to a team like McLaren. Jenson Button is in the twilight of his career. He's just got engaged to his girlfriend, Jessica Mishibata. I can easily see him retiring at the end of the year after his dad passed away and him just settling down. I could easily see that. I think Magnussen is the future of that team. Maybe Stoffel Van Dorn as well. If the McLaren seat becomes available, I'm sure they'll go after Alonso again. Maybe not, depending if Alonso's still got a grudge with Ron Dennis. That could be a factor as well. If not, I don't see anybody else changing their teams anytime soon. Mercedes have Rosberg and Hamilton. That's a very, very strong partnership. Red Bull have just brought in Daniel Ricciardo, and Sebastian Vettel's got a contract till 2016, so he's got at least another 2 seasons there, more than likely. He just signed an extension around the British Grand Prix last year. So there's not a lot of spaces where he could go if he does leave Ferrari. But I think the biggest possibility is McLaren possibly move out, and they move Button out, and they could put him in. As for the possibility of Ferrari cleaning the decks for next season, again, more than a possibility. Raikkonen is 34 years old now, Kimi. His time is running out as well, for sure, and he's struggled so far. It's very early days yet, but still, if the Raikkonen experiment doesn't hold out, I'm sure they could bring in somebody better for cheaper, like Nico Hülkenberg. They were going to bring Hülkenberg in last season, but it didn't quite work out. At the 11th hour, they saw Raikkonen become available, so they thought, let's bring him back instead. Formula 1 is a funny thing. You never quite know what's going to happen. But I could easily see that happening as well. Like, Alonso and Raikkonen are gone, and Ferrari clear the decks. They bring in someone like Hülkenberg, and maybe someone like Paul di Resta, who's got ties with the team. Maybe they bring up Jules Bianchi and give him a shot. Have to wait and see, but I can definitely see that happening. Game Riot asking, the Game Riot, a guy with 150,000 subs watches the show. How cool is that? Game Riot asking, do you think Red Bull pushes the rules of Formula 1 too far? Yes, they do. Fortunately, this is Formula 1 where everybody tries to do that. This is just the reality of the situation. Formula 1 has been around for a long time, over 60 years in its current format. And every team tries to push the rules to their own interpretation and tries to, maximise what they've got, so to speak. Red Bull aren't the first team that's tried to push the rules, and they won't be the last. We've had Spygate, we've had Crashgate in recent years. Super Agree were heating their tyres in giant incubators when they first debuted in Formula 1, and that was like 2005, 2006, or something that kind of time. Breaking the rules happens in Formula 1. It's a part of the sport because people try to push the rules to their interpretation. It's just the nature of the beast. In a sport where you're meant to try and push the boundary of technology as far as you can, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. So, yeah, Red Bull are guilty of this, but then again, so are just about every other team in the paddock. So, as you do, you just try and make the best of it more than anything else. Miguel Silva, comments saying, is there any chance for Rossi to get a 10th championship? MotoGP wise, Valentino Rossi's going to have it pretty tough, if I'm honest. There's just 2 or 3 guys in the sport who are better than him. I mean, Yamaha seemed to have got a decent package, a better bike than people thought they had going in, because Lorenzo's qualifying was pretty poor. But it turns out they've got good race pace, which is exactly what they needed. And, Lorenzo dropped off early, but, I mean, I don't see a way Rossi wins the title with Pedrosa, Marquez, and Lorenzo being the better 3. I just think they're better. So it's just going to be difficult for him to really impose himself at the age of 35, when the young bucks are all faster and more, just as experienced now, and are on better equipment too. Because I think the Repsol Honda is a little bit better than the Movistar Yamaha is at the moment. That's just me anyway. And finally, Joe McMillan says, do you think McKevin has a chance of outscoring Jensen consistently? Maybe. We don't know how good Kevin Magnussen really is yet, and we don't know how much Jensen's really got his head in it anymore. So we could see it happen. I mean, it's very, very early days. I mean, Magnussen had a pretty easy time of it there. I mean, McLaren have got a fast car, and the only threat Magnussen had really the whole Grand Prix was Daniel Ricciardo in front of him. Behind him, Alonso, Hülkenberg, those guys were all 10, 20 seconds back. So I haven't seen Magnussen really fight for a field yet. Maybe then I'll be more convinced, but for now, it was a very impressive debut, and, we'll have to wait and see what goes on. You've got to remember that Australia qualifying session was wet, so we don't quite know what the deal is there. So, yeah, you've got to kind of throw it up in the air, I suppose. Anyway, thanks everybody for your questions. If you've got one yourselves, I'll pick out the best one for the next episode. Just tag your question with Ask Dre in the comments, and I'll greatly appreciate that. In the meantime, let's talk about BT Sport. I must admit, I kind of went into the BT Sports MotoGP coverage of kind of like rose-tinted spectacles. Mainly because the standard had been set so high by guys in the past that I kind of expected something amazingly brilliant from BT Sport on their first outing. And that wasn't really the case. And there's a good reason for that. And I think part of the reason was I think we were still holding the standards so high compared to previous years. I mean, I've been watching MotoGP for about 13, 14 years now, since about the 2000 season, since Kenny Roberts was in his relative prime. And it's kind of a shame, really. And, a lot of these guys got a hard time for their coverage this past week. Melanie Sykes being the anchor it raised a lot of eyebrows as a hire to have Melanie Sykes as the lead anchor. James Toseland, people seem to be quite positive about, and then you had Keith Hewen as a commentator. alongside Julian Ryder from the MotoGP days on Eurosport. So it was overall quite an interesting set of guys. You had Neil Hodgson in the pits. But I think a lot of people also have to realise one little thing. This was their first time for a lot of these guys doing this. And live television is hard. Like, people don't realise live TV, you got one shot. You mean, if you get it wrong, you're buggered. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's not like a pre-taped segment where you can afford to do it 2 or 3 times and get away with it. I'm sure if you asked any of the BBC guys who do live coverage like Matt Roberts, Azzy Farney, Steve Parish, Charlie Cox, Toby Moody, Julian Ryder, Neil Spolders, Randy Mamola, all those guys that have been on TV in the past doing this. Live TV is tough. Like, it is the pinnacle of any industry when it comes to television, and that is difficult. And this was their first time out. Am I saying their coverage was brilliant last week? No, I'm not. It was flawed. Melanie Sykes wasn't great. James Tozen looked very, very nervous out there. But you've got to realise, it's live TV and it's their first crack at this kind of thing. It's hard. It's difficult. Me doing this right now, talking in front of a video camera for Dre TV, that's hard. And I can retake it as many times as I like. Imagine if it put me in front of a live TV camera crew and an audience and have to say these things and remember with a microphone in my ear telling me to say things. I don't think people realise just how difficult live TV is sometimes. And I think people have to realise that it's going to be really difficult. I mean, Keith Hewen wasn't fantastic as a commentator, but he's been doing this for a long, long time. And you know what? He will get better with time. His chemistry with Julian Ryder, I thought, was solid, and it's only going to get better as time goes on. So all I'm going to say is that people really should be giving BT Sport a proper chance, because judging it off of the first race, I think is very, very harsh for a sport that's never, for a channel that's never done this kind of thing before, with hosts and commentators that have not done this kind of thing before as well. I'm not saying what they did was brilliant this past week, but for a first go, I think it was pretty darn good. We also got to consider as well, it's only going to get better with time, and you also got to consider the fact as well that some of these guys have never done live TV, and it's difficult. We've got to also sit back and appreciate what BT Sport are giving us. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of BT in general. Their customer service is terrible and they overprice everything. And £12 a month is a lot of money for BT Sport these days. However, you've got to admit, the coverage we're getting is better than anything we've ever had when it comes to MotoGP on British television. Eurosport didn't air the warm-ups live. Would often delay things. The top class race was on tape delay. It was never live because BBC had the rights to that. And their coverage wasn't brilliant either. And often they were live too. So it's one of those things where you have to appreciate BT Sport are giving us the most comprehensive package of MotoGP we've ever had. We're even getting live review shows like the F1 show does on Sky Sports every week as well. That's brilliant. We've never had that before for MotoGP. So we've kind of got to appreciate what we are being given, rather than just generally crying into a corner and saying, wow, where's Toby Moody? You know, to me, we've got to give it a fair chance. And I think after half a season, we can really start to get a better idea of where these guys are at in terms of hosting. Because trust me, Moody and Ryder and Roberts and Farney and everyone else we've seemed to have appreciated in the past when it comes to MotoGP coverage have been bad too in the past. So let's give them a chance. And the British bias comments need to stop as well. I mean, every British sports broadcaster is biased these days. It's just the nature of the beast. Did you see the Olympics? Did you see the Winter Olympic coverage? Have you seen Formula 1 on Sky Sports and how biased they are towards Hamilton and Button and other British drivers? It's ridiculous. It's just the nature of the beast now for British sports broadcasting. We're all biased as hell. Let's just suck it up and try and enjoy what we do have, rather than nitpick it, because at the end of the day, it's all we've got, and we should at least try and appreciate that. Did you see any of the BT Sports coverage of MotoGP this past weekend? If you did, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on that as well. Couple of quick things to go over before I go. Number one, if you want to submit a segment for Dre TV in terms of, you know, opinionated stuff for Formula 1 or MotoGP, upload it as an uplisted video and then send me the link. And if I like it, I'll put it in an episode. Promise. Second of all, Don't forget to join the Castrol League, the Castrol Race Predictor League. There's prizes for the best teams over the course of the season. A copy of F1 2014 for the overall winner, as well as Harrison 101 t-shirts for the top 3. So, they're coming soon, by the way. They're coming real soon. But yeah, check those out as well if you get an opportunity. Oh, and a couple of quick shout-outs I want to give out as well. Shout-out number 1, follow Scott Woodwiss and Liam Jenkins on Twitter. You may have seen this during Around the Corner earlier in the week, but basically these two guys are in contention for the Motors TV commentary and presenter jobs that are going for the British GT Championship later in the year. Scott and Liam are two of the nicest guys I've had to work with in this community. Woodwiss is a brilliant guy. He's won Around the Corner 4 times. I'm sure if you're a fan of the channel, you've seen him at some point or another, and you know how naturally talkative he is. But he's a really great guy. And Liam Jenkins, again, I've worked with him before on commentary. He's a brilliant person. He really is, and intelligent, witty, just very smart when it comes to racing. He's just a natural. They both are brilliant guys. And as the F1 community, we should get behind them. So if you haven't already, I'll put the links right here. Follow Rapid Scorpion and Liam J Sim Racing. That's their Twitter handles. Part of the contest for Motors TV is a Twitter vote. I think it's 50% that goes down that road. So when it starts up, follow those two guys and follow the instructions, and let's try and get them a job, shall we? That'd be really great. Oh, and one more shout out I want to give out. If you're into beauty, cosmetics, that kind of thing, I've got a friend of mine, Rhiannon, who is a really nice girl, and she wanted me to give her a shout out for her blog on my channel. So yeah, if you want to follow her on Twitter, it's @theTinyElf_. Check her out. She's a really nice girl. She's got a really cool blog, and if you're into that beauty and makeup kind of thing, like the Michelle fans of the world and the It's My Ray Rays of the world, check her out. She's a really nice girl, and she just started modeling lingerie. So there's a plus in there somewhere, surely. In the meantime, but she's a really nice girl, and it's her birthday today as well. So happy birthday, Rhiannon! Mwah, much love. Thanks for checking out the show, much appreciated. But yeah. That's what I've got to say. I've been talking for way too much in this video blog already, but hope you guys enjoyed episode 3 of Dre TV, and I will catch you guys next time. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.